Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
How are you doing, Dad?
Okay, thank you. Very well. Yes, are you okay? Family all right?
Y- Yeah, all good, all good. A bit sunburnt today. Been out in the sun, not for very
Really?
long. It didn't take very long to be sunburnt
Oh,
today.
yes,
Um,
now you mention it, I can see it. Well, you
got a
can
bit of
see that
colour.
I haven't. Well, we've been out, in fairness, we went out. We went quite a long trip and back, but we don't sit in the sun. We just walk around. We're not sun worshippers. But I don't think it was that hot. It must have been hotter where you are than it is down here. I mean, we got the sea breezes. I've said that before, and at the times it was quite chilly. In fact, so
Was it?
yes, and the easterly wind. I think it's northeasterly wind we've got at the moment, and it's hitting us smack on in the coast on the east coast. So, yeah, but uh, but it's been lovely in the sunshine, and I think tomorrow and Sunday we got it again. So, but I don't like. I did get sunburnt many years ago. Actually, it was a golf tournament. It was the British Open in Sandwich. We were friends, and Eileen, your mum came as well, and when we were in the stands, watching the game, and you're stuck there really, and there was no shading at all, and I got burnt quite badly. So I hadn't forgot that. Never again, I said, and never happened again. It won't either.
Yeah, you have to be careful. It catches you out. It catches me out. It doesn't take long for me to be in the sun and to get burnt. So yeah, it caught me today. But not too badly, not too badly. But yeah, it's been very warm today, really, really warm. So yeah. Anyway, this week I know you've been super busy because you finished the Sphinx Cat that we mentioned last
Hmm.
week. So this week we thought we would show everyone the finished picture and talk about that and talk about your experiences. So we're going to put that on screen now for everyone to see. And boy, does this one look good! This looks fantastic. There's probably a lot that we can talk about this one.
Mm.
So realistic. The thing that strikes me straight away is the skin and how uh, that 3D effect of all of those folds throughout the body. It's funny how the face obviously captures your attention, but for me, my eyes are then drawn to the body and just how detailed that skin is. Where would you like to start with on this picture, Dad? Obviously, lots of challenges there.
That's right. Where do you start on something like this? I suppose we start at the beginning, really. When I first saw the animal, I was impressed. But I was also aware that this was not going to be easy, and it wasn't. However, you, you, I don't know what you pull out. When you've done a lot of work and especially a lot of animals, you can pull something out the bag that you didn't expect. And it happened with this. As I was doing the picture, I was going through all the motions and all the things that you do. And of course, I was narrating it as well. So I couldn't focus completely. And sometimes that's a good thing that you don't focus on too hard and too much. You have to relax. And I was relaxed in that. But I did find it tough going, particularly the body that you were talking about. That was hard. I've said it before, when's a line, when not a line, when it's a crease, and that's what it is. And it was hard, and I had to go over that quite a few times to
Did
get
that
it.
take a lot of thought to do that? A lot of thought behind those creases and lines. Did you really have to map those out?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to create them to start with. You can't put all the colours on and pancake them on, which you have to do especially with the UART paper, because you'd lose all the lines. You wouldn't know where you were. So the first thing you've got to do is to establish that, but you can't establish it with a very dark colour. You've got to have a colour that's going to be seen through the whites and the pinks and the mauves and so on that you're going to put in. So that's what I did, and I did it really instinctively. I think I would say, Steve, I had no idea how to do it at all. I've never seen it done. I haven't seen a Sphinx cat either in real life, so I've got no idea how to approach it. But I did, and I was pleased with it, and it turned out really well. I think the body was I would say the hardest thing. It was all quite hard, but the hardest thing, the easiest thing, I think I told you last week, I thought the eyes were going to be easier, and they were. Nose was a piece of cake, to be honest. I mean, I've done them all before. But what is hard, and again, I think I mentioned this last week, where you've got the ochre on the face, it's like a foreign colour. You've got the pink, very pretty pink colours, mauves and greys in there. Then you put on a pretty harsh colour. I mean, the colour was 182, and then I was using I think I used 192, which is an Indian red as well, and a couple of other colours. There was a carbothello mixed in with that, and ochres. So, and that was on top of, it has to be on top of the pinks. You can't put it on its own, it would look awful. So the combination really of the pinks as a base colour and then the ochres on top, you've got to be careful there. I think, I mean, it'd be lovely. I'd love people to try it, and I really hope that they do. But you've got to be prepared. This is an advanced picture, and it's going to take quite a lot of effort to get it looking reasonable. Something like this, I think you've got to be mindful that you could make it look like an alien. You know what I mean? Not of this world if you're not careful. But those are the few points that I've got.
Because I think what's interesting about, I've only seen them in pictures or TV and things like that. I've never seen one in real life. I've only seen videos of them. But you really seem to have captured, from what I remember seeing, the kind of almost the folds in the skin and the kind of what am I trying to say? Like the way that skin falls on the cat, almost like it's pulling, like almost a direction of the skin. Does that make sense? In terms of the folds are angled. Obviously you've copied the picture very accurately, because it seems to really give the indication of where that thigh muscle is and going down to the leg. Like, I think that's adds to all part of the realism, and right at the bottom on the right hand side, the way the skin comes underneath the breast of the cat into the bottom of the cat underneath. And I just feel like you've really created that shape and dimension which you would normally be using fur, and you've had to use skin folds to indicate that. I'm almost terrified to think of approaching this cat in terms of drawing this cat, because I wouldn't know. It feels like fur is a walk in the park compared to this.
Well, this was a cross between a human portrait and a cat, and the type that I've done before. Because and unless you've done the human portrait and use the ochres and the pinks and the greys, as I have done, I don't think you'd be able to do it. I think you've got to have that kind of background, that experience, to be able to know how the colours work and how you can get those very subtle changes. And I enjoyed this part of the picture at the bottom, where, as you say, the thigh, it's on a part, you've got that little dark wedge in the middle there. And that was not particularly hard to do because I've done that before in portrait work. You know, I knew how to do it. It was just a question of applying it. But of course, it looks good. And the other thing, you were talking about the folds, and we're talking about the folds because they are so important in this animal. When you're using the colour shaper, for instance, that's a major tool. If you haven't got one of them, you'd never be able to do it. You can't put the finger. You can put your finger on, but it won't give you the detail. It won't give you the same effect that you're looking at. So and I used the two colour shapers. The pointed one, when you want just detail, especially on those fine lines in the middle of the or the deep part of that crease, and then the slightly wider one, number 2 colour shaper, both ivory. You can't really use grey. Well, you could, I suppose, but the ivory is softer. So once again, it goes with the cat. The cat looks as though it's soft and pliable, and that's what. So using the colour shaper, if you use the grey one, it would be hard. I mean, I've used grey before with fur, and it works well. But here, most of the time, if I'm doing a portrait work, I'd use the ivory. So you see, you're bordering on that in between again.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
hard, but I'm sure. I'm watching it back at the moment, Steve, because I only finished it yesterday, so I haven't had a chance. And I've been busy too and other things. So I've got 2 SD cards to look at. The first one is with one camera, and the second one is the other camera. And I haven't got the other camera yet, which is the main one, but I shall pick that up over the weekend. But I'm really enjoying watching it and reliving it. I wouldn't say that I look at it and think, how on earth did I do that? I know how I did it, but I marvel at the fact that how did I actually know how to do that when you haven't done it before, or you've done similar things before, but you've never done one of those cats before. So I think this is what it's wonderful to have this kind of experience really with art, completely lost in it, and you can tell from my narration that I'm enjoying it.
It is fascinating. It is a fascinating subject, and one of the things that I think is so interesting about this picture is, as someone that hasn't seen one of these cats in real life, is the interest behind the markings and the textures, and something that I've just never seen before on a cat. And because there's especially the comparisons of the face and the below where you have the wrinkles in the forehead and that downwards, that being so different to the rest of the cat, it's almost stripping a cat back of its fur and then seeing what's underneath. And so this is almost like it's such a fascinating insight to the different textures behind the fur of a cat, and see what a cat looks like in this particular breed. And it makes it so interesting. And as someone copying this picture, I imagine that because the markings on the face could easily be slightly interpreted differently, that you're never going to get the same picture twice. There will be slight variations of those markings and shading. Someone obviously will try to emulate as close as possible to your picture, but I imagine that's still quite difficult to get an exact replica. So it's just such an interesting picture to look at.
Well, as I said last week, I would like people to look at it purely from an interest point of view, not necessarily, oh, I've got to do this, and because they realise when they see it done that it is hard. I do tend to make things look easy, but they're not. And I know that when I taught in workshops, I go to something that I think, oh, you should be able to do that. Well, why should they? It's kind of, I would expect people to be able to do it, but they can't. So I learned that quite quickly early on, I then, from then on, had sympathy with them, as we talked about rocks last week, didn't we? Well, I do have sympathy with people doing rocks because I know how I don't have a problem with them, but other people will and do. And so you have to have the sympathy with people for that, because it's so frustrating when they see somebody doing it. Well, why can't I do it? I've actually sent the picture on. I don't think the young lady, Tom's young lady, has seen it yet because she's on holiday. But Tom came back and said how nice it was. Incidentally, you know that we had a comment on last week's podcast. I'd seen the work in progress, and it was from somebody from, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but she from Canada, and she said that the breed was kind of put together. That's want of a better word, in 1966.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just finding the comment now. It was Laura. That if anyone's interested, it's really fascinating. Laura has written a little bit for us
Perhaps you could
about.
read it out, because I'm sure people would find that. I found it absolutely fascinating.
Okay, here we go then. Let me find it. Okay, Laura, let's find your comment areas. Hi, Colin and Steve. Thank you for taking us through the process of drawing the Sphinx Cat. The Sphinx was a breed that was created here in Canada in 1966 after several years of crossbreeding. The Sphinx Cat does tend to have a thin layer of fur on the face, top of the ears and on the tail, and sometimes between the toes. The rest of the cat's skin feels very soft, velvet, or like a, I don't know how to say this, camel cloth?
Oh, yes, I know what you mean. And I think people would know what they're talking about.
How to say that word. The poor things tend to be cold often, and usually they require electric heating pad or a thick blanket to keep warm. They are the same as any other cat behaviourally. On behalf of all other Canadians, I apologise for not giving the world a very pretty feline specimen. Oh dear. It's and she goes on to say, these cats do grow on you over time. Most Sphinx cats are found here in North America, with the highest concentration in Canada, likely because the breed was created here. So I was really pleased to see a Sphinx cat in England, and that you accepted the challenge to draw her. I look forward to the finished product. Yeah, it's interesting. So thanks, Laura, for that insight.
Yes, thanks for reading it out, because
yeah.
it puts it easier for me to try to remember what she said. But it's very kind of her to give us that explanation. And when you take from that, I always assume that they've always been around. It's strange, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I suppose they do resemble the drawings that you see from ancient Egypt, don't they? When you see cats there, they look very similar to that.
Very pointed faces, like Abyssinian, cats, like very Siamese, very triangular faces, like very harsh lines.
But I do understand that they do need looking after, though, because I think you imagine if they go out or it's a very cold day, they would feel the cold because of no fur to keep them warm.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know whether I would like to take the responsibility, but obviously it's loved, and it's a boy. Did we tell people the name?
No, I thought it was a girl. Is it not a girl?
Oh, it might be. The name is Dobby.
Dobby,
No,
I think
Dobby, I suppose, could be a boy or a girl. I don't know.
Assume it's after Harry Potter. So there's an house elf in Harry Potter. So assume it's after Dobby the elf.
Oh,
So,
whatever.
yeah,
It's a very pretty cat. Even if it's a male, it's a pretty cat.
yeah,
And I've loved doing it. I don't know whether I'd ever do another one now, to be honest. It might spoil it if I did another one, having experienced that one and come out so well. But of course, the framing, you'll see that you're showing the picture with the frame, aren't you? All right.
yeah.
Yes. So I showed people at the beginning of the video, I showed them the frame. And, well, I think you saw that last week, didn't you? Yeah. And of course, I put it in the frame, and it does make a difference when you put a frame. But it's a nice little touch, I think, for people to see. It's actually from the beginning to the end. Uh, so
Lovely. So, have you got something? I know you just finished it. Have you got an idea of what you might do next?
yes, I'm going to do the rocks next.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
that was a request, and I'm going to do it because I think it's important that we focus and concentrate on that. Another very hard subject. So I'm going to do that. It's not going to take me very long to do. And then I've got two or three projects, and I don't know which one I'm going to do yet, but it'll be interesting. Something interesting.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed this episode and looking at the Sphinx Cat. And if you are going to give it a go, then stay tuned, because when I next come down and grab the footage off of Dad, I'll try and bump this one up the list. I know it's going to be popular, and it's something different from all the other subjects, the furry subjects that we normally do. So, yeah, look out for that in the future. And we'll check back in next week, Dad, and see how you've got on with these rocks and show them on screen, and we can talk a bit about that too. So, as always, if anyone has anything that they'd like us to discuss or anything that they'd like us to read out on the podcast, then always comment or get in touch with us, email us any questions, any discussion topics that you'd like us to talk about. But for now, we will leave it there for this week. So thank you everyone for watching and listening. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley. Enjoy
Enjoy
your
your
week.
week.